Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey. I'm here with Steve Wright, I would say a dear friend and coworker of mine. He's been on the show twice before. They say it's either three strikes you're out, a third time's your charm. So this is his saving or defining moment right here.
Yes.
But ladies and gentlemen, we've long talked, Steve and I, about doing something called Japan to Jamaica. And I know it sounds like it should be its own podcast, and it should. No one copyright that yet. But we want to do this episode. We're going to talk about cultural identity. We're going to talk about travel, exploration, the pains of moving, the lack of mise en place. We've got a lot to get into today. But ladies and gentlemen, I introduced something wrong here. And so I want to just clarify for anyone listening. Shinshi Shujo no Mini-sama. Koporo Nukes no Atarashi Episodo Yokoso. Itsumo no yo ni hosto no Mr. Whiskey desu. Demo, kyo wa Mr. Saki desu. Jamaica Shushin no Coach Steve Wright san to isho desu. I had to introduce us in Japanese
Hi,
because I'm in Japan. And what I said is
beautiful.
Steve Wright, Coach Wright, is recording with us from Jamaica, and he's going to introduce himself in Jamaican.
Yeah, man. Well, midday in Jamaica right now. Hi, I'm Steve Wright, Mr. Whiskey, and I go back a while now. So this is beautiful. And yeah, it's always a pleasure. He hijacks my weekly water cooler drop-in event. I go live on LinkedIn every week. And when whiskey's there, it's gloves are off. Everything's open. But I'm glad
Ladies
to
and
be here on your
gentlemen,
platform.
ladies and gentlemen, I will say that Steve Wright has had quite the number of characters, for lack of better words, on his drop-in event, and I am not
Oh,
the highest ranked up there. We won't name names, but I know maybe you're thinking of the same person I'm thinking of.
yes,
They
I am.
they
Yes, I am.
also
I
have a
accept.
large hat, so maybe that's the theme. If they have a large hat, they're kind of
Oh,
strange, maybe
n-
because
she
they got
didn't
to
have.
keep
No,
all their thoughts contained within the hat.
I wasn't thinking of that lady.
Oh,
That's a recent idea. I was thinking of one earlier than that, with a little bit zany that we had to.
okay.
We both
Well,
we both we both got stalked by her. But there you
okay.
go. I'll leave it
Interesting.
at that. Yes.
Hmm. Well, maybe we're
You
talking
know what
about the
I'm
same
talking about?
person.
The,
I
the
think we're talking about
artist.
the same person. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Does
yeah. I
she
don't
wear
know who you
hats?
thought
I'm
I
not
was
sure.
talking about.
Okay. Oh, well, I don't want to name people on your show, but anyway, we'll leave it at that. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to this chat
And
because we
and
go
Steve Wright,
all
he's been
over.
stalked many times, especially by older women, and so much so that he had to move from Britain to Jamaica recently, going on about 10 days here, which according to him in Jamaican island time is like 2 or 3 weeks. So obviously he's
Yeah.
settled in. Not yet a native. That takes about, I think they say 6 months, which I guess is, a good timeline. I don't think
Yeah.
so because 6 months, you're not a local yet. Maybe you've
Yeah.
accustomed to some of their dialect, some of their culture, but I mean, there are people who spend 6 months or 4 months at a time at a military base. I mean, are they locals? But the one thing I do want to start the conversation off with an amazing Jamaican introduction there. My Japanese got a little butchered, but you didn't know what I said and I didn't know what you said, so it's all good. We were actually insulting each other, but you know what I've learned in my travels, and Steve, I'm sure you've already seen this in Jamaica. A lot of times when we do intercultural exchange, we focus on the differences, not in a
Yeah.
bad way,
Mm,
oftentimes in a good way. What's different about the food, the way they talk, the way
mm.
they live. One thing that we don't focus on as much, which I think is so important for the global, humanity mission is like I go to a lot of parks. I'm a people watcher and I'll sit at the park in my travels by myself and I'll watch these families barbecue. Their kids are at the playground, the adults are talking, people have their dogs. And what I have found throughout all of Japan, drastically different than the United States in many ways, is at the end of the day, people just want to have a happy family life. They want to be able to go to the restaurants that they go to, shop, go to parks, and have a sense of peace and security and joy with one another. And I think that's
Yeah.
what we often forget sometimes. We project so much cultural difference that we forget about that unifying factor is we're all striving for the same means and goal, which is just to make it through life and hopefully
Yeah.
happily.
Yeah, and we are essentially social animals. We forget that in a society, all the social media and all that stuff. We are social animals. We are built for connection, and part of that connection is sometimes being still. I love people watching too. I mean, I uh, Jamaica's a place where things can run at their own timing, and having people just sit around, literally just sit around, is kind of almost foreign in some busy first world cities where you seem to be loitering because you're not doing anything productive. Um, but there is a value in being still. The scripture says, "Be still and know I am God." I mean, that stillness where you actually engage in society from a place of being still while it's moving around you, rather than moving. Oh, you can move through it too, but rather than moving through it, you are still and it moves around you. It's a very different way of absorbing culture and similarities, and also seeing differences. I mean, differences are helpful, because you need to be discerning, but at the same time, it's yeah. I like you said, it's nice. We have a common bond wherever we are. We just want to get through life, make sure our kids grow up well, and leave the place better than we found it.
Right. And I think a few things I want to address there. First, I'll talk about the common bondness, like even humor and comedy. So I applied to perform some comedy shows while here in, Japan, specifically in Tokyo. And I was talking to some local people about comedy, and they're like, "Oh, you do comedy and stuff." And, that was a common thread that people like to laugh. And we know that scripture
Mm,
says, that a crushed up spirit dries the bones, but laughter
yeah.
is and good cheer is medicine, right? And
Mm,
that's a common thread too, and I think it's interesting that comedy can be universal. And there's also the thread of, hey, you have to know your audience. And I think you and I just talked the other day
yes.
about, maybe performing about a subject that an audience isn't familiar with. It could
Yeah.
be about sports or it could be about a type of cultural habit. And like, for example, if the Jamaican culture is much slower paced and there's a lot more stillness, but I don't know that, and
Mm,
you're trying to joke about it, maybe it'll come off the wrong way. Like, hey, this guy's just like calling Jamaicans lazy or something, but maybe you're trying to highlight something different. And I
yeah.
think there's also a blend of, you know, what is funny in terms of a stereotype, what has some truth to it as a stereotype, and then what is just blatantly racist. Comedy is knowing that balance as well and how
Yes.
you address it. I'll give you an example. I watched a white comedian the other day who is married to a black woman, and they're having debates because the black side of the family has a very particular name culture compared to the white side of the family. And he was joking about it, because his black in-law said, Caitlin, no, 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 no. And he said, well, what if it was Caitlin with a Q and an apostrophe? And then they were like, okay, okay. But he wasn't saying it to make fun of the culture, right? He's married into that culture and it's commentary, and they're trying to find common ground. So that's a huge thing. But wherever you go, like I was surprised that Japan was so receptive to comedy, but at the same time, not because I've watched a lot of Japanese comedy, but it's different. They have game shows that are drastically different compared to the US. And I'm sure if I was going to do stand-up comedy in Jamaica, it would be pretty different. But when I was performing comedy there, as I wasn't a jerk chicken, referencing Steve Wright's upcoming book. But yeah, I think comedy is a common thread, right? And that goes back to people want to be happy, people want to laugh, people want to have a good time. And I think comedy can be a very unifying thing when done properly, and it can be a very dividing thing when done not so properly. I won't name names, but a very famous comedian made some domestic violence jokes, if I'm not mistaken, that got a lot of backlash. There's certain topics that
Mm,
the way you joke about them and how you do them can come off as encouraging or enabling or as insulting, especially to survivors. And, I think the other thing I wanted to talk about was stillness. Now, Steve, I
mm,
agree with you. There's so much value in stillness, but how can we be still now when there almost is no more stillness? That is to say, because of social media inundation, because of our phones, which carry entire
Mm.
Pandora's box in our pocket at all times. A lot of people try to be still and they get warped into it, or they open up, they go sit down at the beach. I'm gonna be alone. And then they open up Pandora's box in their pocket because their mom texted them, or maybe that hot date texted them, or whatever it is. And then once they open their phone, it's very hard to
It's
close.
over.
Right, because the algorithm is programmed for that addiction, for that keeping you in that world. So, how do we achieve stillness when everything is telling us to not be still and everything is actively trying to take away that stillness?
And the answer to the question is the answer to the question is rooted in the answer to most questions. The first thing is awareness. Awareness of the issue is the first domino, the first card to fall with regards to making a change. You must be aware of it. And sometimes you're aware after the fact. You pick your phone up and you realize an hour's gone by and you haven't done anything but scrolled on your phone. Once the hour is gone, you can't get it back. But be aware that starting your phone at 10 o'clock and finishing your phone at 11 has cost you an hour that you may have enjoyed because you wanted to do that, or you may have hated because you only went on there to check a text, and you've gone down that path. So awareness is the first thing. Once you're aware, then you can start looking for the things that can help you deviate, or at least put a rope around your waist before you go into the rabbit hole. So there's lots of things that you can do, but it starts with the awareness, and you have to want it. I think the danger is that we we get inundated with the sound bite so much that it doesn't matter what the sound bite is. We go into an automatic shutdown because there is a sound bite, because something's coming at us. We shut down everything, and that includes our awareness of things coming at us. So we are less discerning because there's so much messaging now. We don't choose between one and the other. And part of that answer, I wrote down something while you were talking about comedy, because humor is one of those things where you can get seriously right and seriously wrong with the same joke. So context is everything. So context is
Mm,
big in terms of understanding and being aware. Once you've got awareness and you've got context, now you can start piecing things together. I know if you've got an app, an iPhone has an app that tells you how much screen time you have, and it can tell you what your screen time habits are. So in the week, you might have less screen time because you're doing other things. In the weekend, you go crazy and you've got a lot of screen time. Being aware of those things help you make the decision, but you have to want the decision too. And you've got to have something better on the other side. Why do you want to have less time on your phone? Your phone serves you if you're just waiting around and you've got nothing else to do, or you don't want to seem like you're not a victim, but you're just you're you're in a bar, all right, you're at a table waiting for somebody. Sometimes it's easier to be in your phone than actually
mm-hmm,
engage with some people around you.
mm-hmm.
So in some ways, it may feel safer to keep yourself preoccupied, like wearing headphones and not listening to anything. It stops strangers and strange people from coming up to you because you just pretend you're listening to something or you're on the phone. Um, so I get it. In some places, those contexts help you. When it doesn't help you, realize as quickly as you can and look for ways to mitigate those rabbit holes, those things, the slippery slope, the rabbit hole, those metaphors are there for a reason because they catch us really quick. But don't turn off. Don't hate everything. Sometimes people they're so sick of sound bites that they listen to nothing. I would go the other way. Don't listen to sound bites. Listen to long form or read long form. Read a newspaper instead of getting your news on the phone. Why? Because it's later. It's someone's had to write it and print it before you see it. Versus getting stuff the instant it happens, the context could be shifted.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for it coming into your feed may not serve you. sometimes it's better to have day old news because you've got a chance for it to sort of, you know, justify itself. If it's not around for a day, then no harm, no foul. If it stays for longer than a day, then maybe you should pay attention. So there's definitely things that we can do. We just have to take the energy to make the energy,
Mm.
take the energy to do it.
Right. And I really love what you said about long form. I think if you're going to be spending time on your phone, you should be listening to the One to One Thing podcast by Steve Wright. I mean, that's probably the best, time filler. If you're going to be avoidant at a bar or you don't want to look like you're a loner, then you should feel like you're having a one-to-one thing with Steve Wright and his guest at least.
And I would say the same for a couple of nukes. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
your stuff has long. You got some long chats, and you got some
Oh
short
yeah.
content too. And you know what? It's helpful. It's helpful to get things in a broader context. Take the time to listen. Take the time to pay attention. We're losing that skill. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm a generation older than you, Mr. Whiskey, and
A few.
uh,
You're a few
uh,
generations older than me, actually.
oh, wow, wow, thank you. And I'm a pre Google baby, right? You know, so I'm a dial-up internet guy. So that ages me significantly. But I say that because there was a time when you had to work harder to get information, and
Mm.
that work was on me, not the technology. Now we've got technology that makes it so easy to get information. There is no work on my side at all. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing.
Right. And well, the declining attention span is another thing too, because it doesn't just affect our social media habits, it affects our relational and, human conversation habits. People are getting that shorter attention span is applying to everything, and not just
Yeah.
on a mental and psychological level, but on a chemical level
Mm.
as well, which we
Yeah.
know there's a lot of studies about that. One thing I want to talk about, Stillness, a really great sermon piece I saw the other day online not too long ago was that
Mm.
people were like, God hasn't spoken to me. Pastor, like, I keep trying to listen for God's voice. And he goes, when are you listening? If you're always on your phone, always reading something, always being bombarded by information, he goes, people used to hear God more because people used to be still more. They used to be having some silence more. It's not just about your prayer time, it's throughout the day. God is trying to speak to us about things, and you can't hear him because you're so busy plugged into whatever is on your phone. And I really thought about that. It's not just about God talking to you, but about talking to yourself. We are
Yeah.
avoiding our inner dialogue, these moments where you're waiting in line somewhere, waiting on the train, waiting at a bar, whatever it is, where you could be reflecting on a problem or having an inner dialogue, and instead you're just filling in that space with mostly the truth is, and Steve and I know this, we've had a lot of conversations about this, with they call it brain rot, right? I mean,
Mhm.
how do you hear that term and not have concern? It's rotting your brain. They call it brain rot. And people are
Mm.
joking, oh, that's just another term for memes and humor and content. No, there's a difference between, genuine humor and brain rot. And a lot of the internet now is that. And what we see is Steve and I, we post stuff about human connection, about, on my end, the prevention and awareness of domestic violence, human trafficking, sexual assault. Those do not get pushed out by the algorithm. Some of them have zero
Mm.
views because they had the word rape in them or sexual violence or whatever it is. The algorithm refuses to push it out. Seth Ryan runs the School to Embassy Project. He's been on my podcast twice to school shooting prevention and safety. They basically block his content.
Wow.
Meanwhile, and I've shared this example before. My ex-fiance had showed me if you there was a video of a guy, he goes around, he sticks his finger in ant holes and he rates them on a scale of 1 to 10 on ant biting power, on the coarseness of the dirt and stuff. Each video he had over 1 million views or likes. Meanwhile, I'm posting a clip, hey, it's Men's Mental Health Awareness Month in some
Yeah.
places, and here's some stuff about men's mental health that you probably didn't know that is really important. Yeah, and it doesn't get pushed out. And
Listen.
so it's not just about what you consume, it's about what the algorithm puts out. And so
Mm.
that time can be spent reflecting on problems. And this isn't just a waking hour problem. All this inundation is being processed while you sleep. Every
You
meme,
sleep.
every brain rot, every news article or clickbait, flashy information, right? Because you talked about the filtration process being completely down now. So many
Mm.
fake news articles, and now it's harder than ever before to discern fake news because AI can write it in the most realistic news style. All right, there are fake Bible passages out there that I've gotten to read that
Wow.
AI used ancient Hebrew literary form to make it seem realistic, and people believed it. People believe I
Mm.
read it was a whole Bible scene where Satan shows up on at the crucifixion and is telling Yeshua on the cross, "You died for people who are going to become corrupt political leaders in America. They're going to become rappers and gangsters, and you died for these people." And people believed it.
Mm.
So your brain is processing all of this at night. And that's why we're
Mm.
seeing even more. I mean, phones in general interrupt sleep habits. We already seen that. I've had plenty of sleep experts on this show. I had the FBI sleep instructor on my podcast, so I've
Mm.
gotten some great information, and y'all can check that out. But checking your phone in the middle of the night, reactivating your brain to a certain degree in the middle of the night, having anxiety over, I mean, FOMO, right? Fear of missing out,
Mhm.
huge, right? I mean, that's always been a thing to the level it is now. On my show, we've talked about social media's effect on women committing self-harm, especially at
Mhm.
the ages of 8 to 9 years old, as young as
Yeah.
that, and then men and suicide when it comes to older stuff, pornographic exposure at 8 or 9 years old. So there's a lot going on with social media, and all
Yeah.
that information is playing in our brains instead of what we could be focusing our energy on, which is one, leaving room to hear God, leaving room to hear our inner dialogue, and leaving room to reflect on what other people said in our life. We're
Properly.
kind of
Yeah.
pushing everything else out, listening to all this nonsense.
Yeah. And that's maybe, I liked your example of the person saying they couldn't hear God yet. Is that why preachers shout so much? That why when they preach they have to shout?
Yeah, I mean
Because they don't
that's a good
hear.
example. I mean, if I had a live audience, some of my sermons would be fiery. I've got a sermon coming up that has that. So, Steve, actually, I think I discussed with you. I was diagnosed with what is it? BPE, Black Pastor Energy, based on and this was ChatGPT diagnosed me, so it's take it with a grain of salt. But
Of
you
course.
remember there was a trend going around where it was like, hey, ChatGPT, generate me at the Met Gala. I think the year was art or something. And it generated me as a middle-aged black man with a beard in this elaborate mega church style robe with green radioactive crosses and gems because my ministry is called Radiating Faith. It leaned really heavily into my ministry side more than my podcast side. Of course, the ministry is
Okay.
integrated with the
In.
podcast, but it said based off your sermon notes and the way you talk, you have BPE, which is Black Pastor Energy, which is that,
Amen.
and it could be good or bad. There are false prophets who use BPE and there are good people who use BPE.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's one of the funniest things about being a podcaster, is the way people can interpret you without seeing you. There's a lot
Yes.
that's said in that. I've had some people who listen to my podcast, they come to guest on the show and they say, "Whoa, Mr. Whiskey, I thought you were 42 years old, or I thought you had a beard, or and unfortunately, the response I've gotten in real life is, I thought you were a lot taller than, we watched your podcast and we thought you were a lot taller in real life." So that one hurts. But everything
I'm
else,
sure I'm short too. I'm short too. I'm below average male height.
I wouldn't
And so
say that I'm
I get that.
short, but I think that the cowboy hat projects that. I guess the classic American stereotype is that cowboys are tall. I mean, that's kind of
Mhm.
just like
Yeah.
the
And
thing.
you're thin. You're thin too.
Right.
So
I'm
yeah.
wiry and
Good.
lean
Yeah.
and the hat. And luckily the boots make me taller. And, I don't
Six
think it's
inch.
a cheat. Asian women wear 8-inch black platform shoes. I wear cowboy boots. We're all even, I went on a date once. The woman was in 9-inch heels. And I didn't even notice because, I was focused on her face. And then she took them off and went, I mean, I was like, whoa, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Where'd you go?
I know. I was sad because when she was leading me, by my hand through the place, and everyone's looking like, "Wow, how did he score that? Such a tall queen." And then later on, now it's like I'm like, "Where'd she go?" You know. Um, And yeah, but anyway, point being, yeah, so it's funny that seeing like how ChatGPT evaluated me, how other people have, how it's really interesting. I think about too, like I just did an episode the other day because it was my birthday a few days ago. I did a reflection episode
Oh,
on youth and entrepreneurism. And I talked about from Jeremiah and Timothy, where God says to them,
yeah.
do not say you are too young, for I am going with you. And I
Yes.
talked about,
Yes.
unfortunately, some of the judgment I have gotten when it came to speaking on stage or other engagements, constantly being called 12 years old, 17 years old, um, just belittling terms. There's a, hey, you look
Yeah.
young, and then, hey, you're 12 years old. And this was a lady, I was trying to buy lottery tickets too. And Steve, you saw my comedy skit. I said, not alcohol, not cigarettes. They
Yes.
only ID me. I don't smoke cigarettes, but they only ID me when I go to get lottery tickets. And it's like the dangers of the Powerball. But they'll sell me a whole thing of whiskey. Well, they must know who I am, so I guess it makes sense. They must know who
A
I
whole thing of
am. But
whiskey.
I forgot I'm Mr.
Yes.
Saki today. Watashi wa Mr. Dusaki. But
Mr.
yeah.
Osaki.
And
But yes,
yeah, go on, go on.
yeah. No, I was just gonna reflect on what you're saying, just about things being picked up and things being disingenuous because AI can manipulate and even just people's perspectives and when they hear you and don't see you, or sometimes when they
Mm.
see you and don't hear you, or when they see you from a distance and don't engage with you.
Mm.
Classic. I had a classic example. I mean, I'm Black British, born in the UK. I was 18, living in Zambia, and we'll talk about where we've lived in the world as well.
Yeah.
We're going to go through travel and stuff. But I was living in Zambia by Victoria Falls, and I walked into a garage, and I was after something, and there seemed to be no one in the shop. And then I sort of called out, said hello, and there was a guy that I saw his legs under a vehicle. So I came up, said hello, and he pulled himself out from under the vehicle, and he looked at me, and he looked around as if to say, who was talking to me? Because he saw a black guy thinking I was,
Right.
that I'm African Zambian. And I spoke to him again, and it's like you can see the lights kind of went on, or he kind of
Why is he British?
rejigged it, and then and I've had that. I've had that in a visit to the school in Soweto, and this is in the 80s, early 80s, and every question from the school children. We were a mixed group traveling through
Mm.
Southern Africa. This is post-apartheid, but still very much entrenched in the society. So the signs were down, but the apartheid in hearts and minds and society was still very strong. And we visited a mixed group, white and black. I was only black in the group. We went to a school, and every question in this classroom, it's a Soweto school, so it's a black school, was to me. No, they never asked another question of anybody else. They wanted to know where I was from, where I was really from,
Mm.
which is an interesting question, because England didn't cut it. They thought I was American
Well,
or Canadian.
right. And my
I said,
fiance gets that a lot as well. Like,
mm,
right, but you're from the Philippines because she's Filipino American. She was born here.
yeah,
She gets that a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
Like where are you really
You
from?
from. Yeah,
Right. And it's like
the from.
right. And that's been going on for a long time. I've seen also a lot of humorous sketches about that, making
Yeah,
fun to call to light that kind of behavior. Because when you
yeah,
watch someone else say it, you're like, what an idiot, how rude. But then sometimes you don't realize it's your own actions. And I remember, if I'm not mistaken, one time on the water cooler, which is your weekly virtual event, as you mentioned earlier, I
mhm,
believe you shared a story from many years ago where you were actually not allowed in the building. You were the only black gentleman in your group, and I think you said you were
mhm.
told you weren't allowed inside. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah. Again, that
I
was
keep
that
all
was
I
the,
keep all
on
the
the.
memories under my hat so they don't,
You're really,
drift off.
yes. You're like
Yeah.
you're like Ratatouille there. You got
I
something underneath there
know.
pulling on
I've
the
also got a
pulling on
picture
the
of you in
neurons.
black and white playing soccer that I keep under my hat.
Oh, that one. Actually, you might have to send it to me because I can't find it. But but yes,
Elon Musk
yeah, it
can
was
print it from
strange.
my mind using the chip in my brain. It'll be like a Polaroid. It's going to come out of my mouth, you know? Like, here you go, Steve. Let me shake it off first before I
Yeah,
hand it to
shake it
you.
off. Yeah, shake it like a Polaroid picture. But it was, yeah, it was on that same trip, and we stopped to get some snacks. And everywhere we stop, I do a like a Jason Bourne recovery. You know, I do a record reconnaissance of the space. Can I? Are there any signs? Are there black people being served? Are there black people working in there? Um, you know, does this look like a place that I would be okay in? And we actually went into the store, and there's a food place, so like a bakery, but they had a space inside to eat. And we thought, oh, let's rather than be out in the sun, let's go and sit in the back. So the group went to sit at the back, and I followed them, thinking that since I bought food there, I could eat it there. And the owner came out and said, no, 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 not you. Out, you've got to take it out. And it
Yeah.
was like, you know, it's okay. Interesting enough, this again in the age of this is back in the 80s. So in the age today of the cancel culture, or people being so enlightened that they'll be outraged by it. Um, in the moment, you have to be discerning. In the moment, you have to be gracious, even to your enemy, you know, even to somebody who is despising you. You have to have that pause between your what's happening to you, the stimulus, and your response. If you
Mm,
don't have that pause, you end up in a lot of trouble most of the time, because the stimulus leads to a response without the pause. And more often than not, your response isn't going to be appropriate for the stimulus, regardless of what the stimulus is. You
right.
know, and
Well,
sometimes
there's a
we go,
biasing to how they receive your response because you could say, "Hey,
mm,
I'm coming off as a very polite gentleman," but they already had this preconceived notion that you're a rebel or a troublemaker, you don't respect authority, and now you're
mhm,
trying to not talk back to them, but they're taking it as talking back, and then it's just going to amplify so much. And I think there's a debate of will my response make any impact toward change, or will it just further already engraved notions? And I think that's a huge balance to have. Of course,
yeah,
it's difficult to do because you want to defend yourself and speak up, of course, and shed light on that. But maybe the better response is, be respectful, show them that respect, and then maybe on a different platform or a different time that's more appropriate, bring light to it like you are now.
yeah. And like you said about the knee-jerk response of seeing you in person, or seeing you having heard you on a podcast and thinking, oh, I thought you were much older than that, and then almost flipping the script in terms of trying to be funny by saying you're 12-year-old. That's rude.
Right.
It's not even being cleverly funny.
And the
It's
reverse
just
is even more rude because I joked. So when I called to attention at Military Creator Con when I performed stand-up comedy, one of my opening jokes, which I had to do it virtually because the video didn't record it for a second, but I'll tell
mm,
you the response. This joke did not land. I started off with, I'm so glad to be serving comedy for such a wide range of veterans because a lot of you look like you are old enough to have served longer than I've been alive. Now, you know how many of them had said that to me themselves? Almost all of
mm,
them. They thought it was funny.
yeah.
Now, I brought it to light as the introduction to my set, and I got a bunch of like kind of grumbles and curses and complaints. Like, if you call, because I had this happen. I tried buying alcohol once, and this guy was giving me a hard time because cops were pretending to be underage children to route out establishments that were serving. So he was extra cautious, but he was very rude to me about it. And, because look, just check my ID, if it's real, blah, blah, blah. And he kind of like was rude to me. So I got a little defensive and I was like, you know what? I just got off of a submarine where people I serve with are dead. So you can have your freedom. And when I went into a whole, we're old enough to die for you, but you're not going to give us a drink. And I got very upset because I was tired of it. I was
Yeah.
tired of it.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I would take it as a compliment. He calls over a black gentleman who's like in his 70s. He's like, if I told you you looked, in your 20s today, how would you feel? Oh, Lord, I'd be good. Well, no kidding. I said, from that perspective, of course. I said, but from our perspective, it would be the equivalent of me saying, hey, you look like you're 90 even though you're
Yeah.
60, right? Because you are saying it in a way that is detracting, not
Yes.
adding. I'm not at the
Yeah.
threshold where calling me younger than I am is a compliment as it is once you're advanced in years. I'm at the threshold where you are belittling my age
Yeah.
to a point of
Yes.
I don't have the rights or the maturity or the intelligence to be
Yes.
XYZ adult. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I think what we're talking about really is actually in the Bible where God says, I judge by the content of their character, not
The
their
heart.
appearance. The hearts of men judge by the outward appearance, right? That's why Saul was great. Unlike me and you, he was really tall, and they said, that's a great king. A king should be tall. And then he said, hey, David, David's a young shepherd boy, but, he's got a heart after my own.
No,
That's what matters.
that's
And
yes.
so I think podcasting, I guess, is one of those interesting forms where you might only hear a person and you're hearing their character before you ever see them. And
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
that might not be the truth. You and I have talked about like, hey, if we met in person, guarantee I'd probably be wearing this hat and you'd probably bring a jump rope. But does that mean that's who we are? I think you and I, yes, the answer is yes. But there are some
Yes.
podcasters. There is the age-old saying, don't meet your heroes in real life. It's all an act,
Whoa.
right? We've heard that a
Yes.
lot, that a
Yes.
lot of these
Yes.
celebrities, what you see at the Grammys, the Oscars, on TV
Yes.
shows is not who they
Yes.
really are. And you and I
Yes.
have talked
Yeah.
about this before. The content of your character as it is, not as it is portrayed. Make that a
Yeah.
soundbite.
Character. It should. It should so not be underestimated. And like you said, don't be careful about meeting your heroes in person. And through the work I did with Tony Robbins, I met Tony. I met Tony a number of times
You
on and
watched
off
him weep.
stage, and watched him weep. Yeah, watched him weep. Watched the movie together, and he was crying. That's facts. I mean, I'm not trying to make this
And you
up to
can
be
check out the
impressive,
One to
but
One Thing podcast or the last episode of Couple of Nukes with Steve Wright, where we reveal what movie it was.
what movie it was, and it did choke me up too. But the point is that character means so much more, and take the time to find people in contexts. The contexts are important when observing one's
Mm.
character, because we're on this platform, we're on
Well,
Zoom. I mean, I've got a little studio light, I've got a 4K camera. I'm
but you're
sitting here in a
real. You've
room, and
got a bug that's been flying
but
around this
I've
whole
got
episode.
I've got lights on at night. I've got noise canceling headphones on, trying to keep the cicadas. It is so loud in the Caribbean at night in Jamaica. It's strange, although it's nice. It's almost like white noise when I
Mm.
sleep. It doesn't bother me to sleep,
You trade
but when
off
I
light
do,
pollution for noise pollution. You've got to have one of the two. You
I,
can't ever just have full stillness.
well, we had an island-wide power outage for 9 hours yesterday, and that may have factored into, well, not an excuse for not us meeting earlier, but that it's fact it happened. And so yes, we can get light pollution was not an issue. We had solar, fortunately, so I had power. But it is, yeah, noise is interesting. It's interesting at night that they come out, and because things are generally quiet, you hear them more, or they're just
Right.
communicating with each other at night because they can't see each other. So the nights get very loud, surprisingly loud, especially if you're podcasting. Man, oh man, you've got to make sure you cancel
Well, in
because you
America, it's the opposite way. Every morning that I try to podcast, landscapers would show up, and it's like it felt like they only ever showed up if I had a podcast scheduled in the morning. Like my apartment complex at the time, they kept changing the schedule, and somehow, like I think they had my Calendly like in their computer system because every time I had a morning podcast, yeah, they called the guys. They're like, today, you got to come in
now.
today. And you said something really important that I want to amplify on the context of character in terms of what is going around. David Goggins, he's one of my earthly heroes. And he said, people were talking about me. You don't know me, but you're judging me based off a 5 second clip you saw some jerk off posted. Like, and he did a video that really spoke to me about his character. People made all these videos bashing him as a bad father, said he was a terrible father figure, that he didn't pay his child support, he was abusive to his wife or daughter or whatever. And those videos got millions of views. People trying to tear down David Goggins. He made a video. He goes, I brought to light that situation. I have all the receipts. He goes, you can attack me all you want. I have all the receipts. Every time I paid child support, every time I reached out to my family, blah blah blah. He goes, now people made apology videos once the truth came to light, but those, they didn't get millions of views. They got a couple thousand views. And guess what? They still kept up the original video because it's still trending. And that spoke a lot to me about what trends more, apologies or
Wow.
defamation, right? He's like
Mm,
millions of views
mm,
because people want to see David Goggins fail. He gets it all the time.
yes.
People want to hear him fail. I'll quote one of his favorite scenes. When I got my knee injured, people were laughing. People were celebrating. I told you David Goggins was gonna fall apart one day. He's like, people are preying on my downfall. And for
Mm,
what reason? What, right? Because my training method they don't agree with or whatever. But he shares all the time, like, you don't know me. You see a 5 second clip someone posted of me running down the street and they say X, Y, Z or ABC. People say, oh, he's not a Christian because they show a clip where I used the F
mm,
word. He goes, but you
yeah.
don't see the scene where I'm on stage crying, thanking my mother in tears at a veteran ceremony. That one doesn't trend as much. And it's really like, what do we consume more, the truth or the drama, the entertaining story, right?
Yeah.
And that's the truth
Yes.
of it. People rather see those clips of, wow, David Goggins, this guy who everyone is praising is actually evil, rather than hey, we thought this guy was bad, but he's actually a good guy. And it goes back to one of my favorite Shakespeare quotes of all time. In Mark Antony's giving this speech about the death of Caesar,
Mm,
and he says this: the evil a man does often lives after him. The good is often turned in the bones. One of my favorite quotes
mm,
of all time.
yeah.
And
That's
it's not
great.
just
You
when you're
know,
dead, it's when you're alive too.
yeah. And the thing about that halo effect, it is a logical fallacy that we paint someone who's a hero and justified hero in one aspect. We create this halo effect that they are the same kind of hero in all aspects.
Hmm.
And that's where we get ourselves, and they get themselves into trouble because they speak on things or they act in ways in a different context where they have no place or they have no
Hmm.
credibility in them, but they're using their halo effect to speak to things that they
Hmm.
maybe should or
True.
shouldn't do.
Especially singers and movie actors who have been so idolized and given such status. So much so that the bonds of covenantal marriage are willing to be violated. People have, I'm sure you've heard of it, Steve, like my celebrity hall pass. Like I cannot cheat on my wife with her accepting it, but if it's Scarlett Johansson or Billie Eilish or Jenna Ortega, naming my favorites, if it's one of those people, no, I'm just kidding. But like,
Watch out, Scarlett.
right, right. I mean, yeah, but I was gonna try to make like a Black Widow, and I was trying to
No,
think of like what
no.
Avenger I looked like. I don't know, Ghost Rider. I was trying to think of I was trying to figure something out, like what Avenger has a cowboy hat. I was trying to figure it out, but um, that is
Captain
to say,
America.
like we value marital intimacy so much, but if it's a celebrity that changes everything, why is Jenna Ortega no different than any other woman? Or why is Chris Hemsworth, and granted he's almost as good looking as me, so I get it, but why is he
True.
considered a hall pass, right? Because not because of their character necessarily. Sometimes a celebrity is a bad person, but they're still a hall pass. And are they really that much better looking, or is it just we've elevated them, we've pedestalized them? And I've done a couple sermons on modern idolatry. It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and also there's a thing about Tony talks a lot about this in I don't know one of his programs. I think it was Date with Destiny, which is one of the mastery programs we did. which really talks a lot about our makeup and who we are as people. And one of the things he talks about in terms of modeling behavior, you want to aspire to be like somebody. You look at what
Mhm.
they do. You look at their behaviors. If you do roughly what they do, then you might get some of the outcomes that they get, whether it's a health routine, a workout routine, and a work routine, whatever. But just doing what they do is never enough, because you have to
Mhm.
understand why they do what they do so that you can
Mhm.
build a similar why. You need to have organizing principles behind the things that people do so that you understand it. Simon Sinek goes with start with why, But even beyond, before the why, there has to be a desire. There has to be a desire for the outcome for yourself, not just following somebody who has got something that you want. Because most likely you won't do what they do. I won't do what Goggins does because I don't have, I mean, even understanding a little bit of his organizing principles, they're not mine. So for me to try and pretend to be him doesn't make any sense. The danger is when celebrities, I think, when celebrities believe their own hype, when
Mhm.
something is ascribed to a celebrity that they didn't ascribe to themselves, but they end up believing it, whether it's because they're surrounded by yes people or that people are too
Mhm.
scared to tell them, the
That
emperor's
right
got
there,
no
what you said,
the
they're
emperor's got
surrounded
no
by yes
clothes.
people.
Yeah.
That's not just
And
celebrities. That's something we all could be trapped in. Sounding boards and
yes,
echo chambers. Social media serves as that, but also, as we've talked a lot, you and I, Steve, right? Everyone in our space talks about the five inner, the five people closest to you or whatever your inner circle is, being
yeah,
surrounded by that. Yes. And this is the difference between friends and accountability partners and allies. Are they
yes,
sounding
yes.
boards or not?
Yes, and it's funny that the five people thing. I sometimes subscribe to it, and other times dismiss it. And also, I sometimes change the five people. I go through seasons and periods and understanding contexts where the five people may
Mm,
be different, and I'm okay with my five people being different at different times of my life or different
hmm
contexts of my career. um, and also, I'm okay with not being in the five people for somebody else. I think I'm of an age where it doesn't bother me as much that I need to be in the in crowd. I need to be
mm.
in that circle. So if I'm not one of the five in somebody else's five people, then that's okay. And if my five people change because my circumstances change or my context changes, then I have to be okay with that. I have to be resilient enough in my own
Mm.
skin to be okay with what life or what the world throws at me
Like just
in order for
moving.
me to
You just moved.
thank
That's
you.
a great example of when
Yeah, my five people
your
are
five
very
people are going
different.
to shift. Like nowadays you still have online connections, of course, but
Yeah.
the amount of time you spend in person with someone, it's different than online. But I
Yeah.
think another thing too, when we talk about the celebritization and like ascribing to their why versus getting their results, one thing that we need to mention too is a lot of people project copy and paste mentality onto what celebrities have done. And it's not. I like to
Yes.
use physical fitness as the prime example. Steve and
Yeah.
I are both really chiseled, godlike men in our bodies, but looking at some other people, they have different anatomies than us. And what I do is going to be different for them, right? Like I have because of my metabolism, because of my muscle fiber design,
Yeah.
because of my dietary habits, right? All this stuff is different compared to someone with a drastically different build, right? So a lot of these guys are trying to, prescribe to these different gym programs from these celebrity gym guys who it may not work on them. Some things are copy and paste, right? The same goes for our psychological and mental and emotional.
Yeah.
What people did to make their income or make their mindset shift, it will be different than yours. In fact, that
Yeah.
individualization and customized treatment being not just a medical treatment, but how you change your life, is what I talk about on the show, most importantly, with addiction recovery, right? The 12 steps can copy paste to a lot of people, not to everyone. I've had plenty of
Yeah.
anti 12 step shows, not. to tear down the 12 steps, but to provide information on non-traditional systems and
Yeah.
methods of
Yeah.
recovery. Look, I've
Yeah.
had addicts on my show who cold turkey. They quit, started going to the gym 3 hours a day. They're sobered. I had some people it took 30 years to get sober. Some people
Yeah.
really liked AA. Some people hated it. And I think sometimes we think because someone is successful that we can just copy what they do. That was the case, and someone like Tony Robbins said, "Here's exactly how I made my income." Then how come we all can just exactly copy it right now and make that same
Yeah.
income, right? A lot of
Yeah.
things were contextual. I've had some
Yeah.
people I interviewed. I had a gentleman. He made at what would be equivalent to millions of dollars nowadays selling broken calculators in like 19 something something as random number generators. If you did one times two
Wow.
times three times four times five, it gave you a different answer every time. The company wanted to see him fail as a salesman, said, try selling these broken calculators, like F you Americano. And he sold them as random number generators, sold every single one of them, made millions basically. You couldn't do
That's
that
smart.
nowadays. You couldn't do that nowadays because the opportunity doesn't exist. You can look
Yeah.
for similar
It,
opportunities, but some things are only time relevant or contextual
yeah.
relevant and can't be recreated.
Yes. And I was going to say that's a great point in terms of yes, you can't you that you can't it's difficult to replicate that kind of success in that way.
But the
But
creativity of the
what was
mindset.
yes, what was missing, what the superpower that that person had, that guy had, is that he was able to pick up on nuance. We don't use nuance anywhere near as much now as we did back then because we had more time, we had more space, we paused more, and we had to work harder to learn things. So, given a calculator that creates a different number every time, you would have to see, you have to ask the question, what is the benefit of something that creates a different number every time? Within a whether it's within a decimal place or whether it's between 0 and 10 or whatever it is,
Hmm.
and you find out what it does and you lean into the benefit and not the brokenness. Sometimes we don't look at benefits because we're so busy looking at what's broken, and for to have that time in that time and space to actually present that broken calculator as a good thing in this one space random generation. It's great. We do that now. You have a random function in Excel or in mathematics that generates numbers between a range, and we do that all the time. We need to do that in certain coding scenarios. So having something on my desk that just gives me a number, I could see the context. If you go to the right place at the right time, they'll bite your arm off to
Right.
have that piece of kit. But nuance is the key. It's that character. It's understanding context. It's understanding nuance. Nuance requires you to take the time to think, and we are taking less and less time to think
Hmm.
because we think giving our thinking to something else
Hmm.
is better, or it frees us up to do what? What do we do with the time that we're supposed to get back? I remember the computer revolution, and having fax machines. You don't have fax machines, you send emails. That all the paper we're going to save. There's just as much paper being used now as it was back then. We don't necessarily, we have these labor saving devices,
I,
but what do we do with the labor
mhm.
that we're supposed to save? I
Well,
don't
I
know.
think a good irony and contradictory point that I've seen is at the Planet, not everyone, but one of the Planet Fitness gyms that I had been going to, they have paper towel rolls, huge ones at each station to clean down your machines. And then in the bathroom, they have a hand dryer and they say, we're hand drying to save use of paper because it saves this many amount of trees per square foot or whatever.
Please,
And I said, but you've got like, probably 50 acres of
two
dead trees
tons.
outside in the gym. And then I said, and then of course there's always something. I said, okay, so this hand dryer probably requires electricity. I know it's not from me on the chest press, so that could generate kilowatts for sure, but it must be coming from somewhere, which means we're killing something somewhere. But yeah, and I remember,
Yeah.
Steve, you told me about the first time you bought a random number generator. It was, I think, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was 1967. You were in London, and women just kept asking you for your phone number, and you couldn't keep making up fake phone numbers. So you actually downloaded a random number generator to make sure that none of them texted the same number. And I remember
Number.
you actually reached an error at the app where it said we've ran out of, the 9-digit
Numbers to
combinations.
generate.
We've ran out of that many combinations, and
Well, well, I'm going to stand to correct you on a number of factors there, Mr.
no
Whiskey.
pun
It couldn't
intended.
have been 19. It couldn't have been 1967. I would have been 4 at the age at that time, and then that is
You
not
were
the
born
age
good
that I
looking.
would be. Thank you.
Hey,
But
maybe
I
you were
was not
Benjamin.
just. I
Maybe you're
was.
Benjamin Button. Maybe you're actually now the youngest you've ever been. I mean, there are rumors that when you moved to Jamaica, you de-aged 30 years, according to
Well,
some people.
Dr. Carl, I'll
I
call it
didn't
out on your
say it.
show.
I did
Dr.
not. When that was said, I just remained silent. I didn't nod my head yes. I didn't shake my head no. I just said, I'll let Steve have it. I'll keep my opinions to
There you
myself.
There you go. There you go. There is something to be said for for waking up warm and being in a Caribbean climate. It definitely does make you feel. I don't know. The days feel more natural. There's a cadence. There's a cadence in the Caribbean that is very hard to replicate in other parts of the world. I mean,
What I will say
you just
is if you capture all the cicadas and put them in like a
a
container for you
blender.
to sleep on, you could have like a massage bed.
Oh yeah, they'll definitely vibrate me off the bed if I captured all the cicadas that are making noise around here.
Right, right.
They are
That's
definitely.
that's the nuance turned into
I
creation right
would.
there.
It's not worth the effort, though. You could buy a device that would save you from capturing all those cicadas. But like you said, it's taking the time. It's taking the time to do the work. We both know what it's like to labor at something that you're passionate about. Whether it's topics in your space that are really close to your heart. Um, and it's interesting because your name came up a couple of times this week with regards to your Pink Flamingo sermon
Oh, thank you.
that I shared with Shanielle, who runs a group called the Pink Flamingo Way, and that's where that whole thing came from. And also today, unfortunately, I was listening in on a memorial service for a cousin of mine in the States, ex-Navy,
Mm,
that unfortunately succumbed to. He was ill for a while, but he had attempted suicide a number of times,
mm.
and just it's. I don't bring it up. You know intimately what it's like to have that stigma of bringing up those sorts of topics in
Right.
certain spaces, and and it's interesting because of who I know you to be. When I was listening on the service it was streamed today, you came to mind because you know too well um, what kind of dynamic that brings up for surviving family members, for people that have been touched by it, and my family's been touched by it. So, uh, those are the sorts of things that if you don't take the time to contemplate, like you said, to introspectively think on things, they will just go over your head, and you'll get stuck in another brain rot activity.
Right.
And the world is not moving faster. Even though as people get old, they say that the world is spinning faster. It feels like the world is speeding up because you're getting older. But in actual fact, the world has always span at pretty much the same rate. As long as we've been on it, it's been on the same rate as far as we're concerned. So it's not the world getting faster, it's something else. And we don't stop to think about what are we doing to why are we accelerating our lives? Why are we accelerating to the degree that we think more is always better, faster is always better? I don't know where that came from. Um,
Well, you and I have shared
Or
a different saying a few different times from the Navy. It's one of the few Navy sayings I like, which is slow is
yes,
smooth and
slow,
smooth is
smooth,
fast.
smooth is
We've talked about
fast.
that a few
Yes,
times. It's one of the few sayings
yes,
from the Navy I liked. And then first time quality impression, which is, hey, if you do the work right the first time and you take the time to do it, and then you don't have
yeah,
to redo it. That's a shorter
yes,
day than
yeah,
taking shortcuts and then you get caught and now you have to stay however many hours to fix it or it goes
yeah,
wrong. And I think
yeah,
there's a lot to be said to that. And I think a lot of people
yeah.
are taking shortcuts nowadays. And I think my biggest pet peeve is people who are using AI to generate content and aren't even fixing errors with it. Like if you're gonna generate an
It
image
says,
or a prompt, at least take the time to fix it, especially if it's a big brand thing or if you're using a virtual assistant. So let's just say one of the events that I'm a part of, I was very disappointed. They have a virtual assistant who I believe made their shirts or AI made their shirts, and the event was for a cruise, and the word cruise was spelt wrong, and every single shirt was misprinted. And now everyone who wants to make content with that clothing can't, who want to promote it can't, or if they do, it's making you as the founders look lazy or, for lack of better words, stupid, right? Because it's such a
yeah,
minute error, but you let your whole brand be represented by that. Or I
yeah,
interviewed someone who their logo was made by AI, I could tell, and one of the all the letters were superimposed over the
yeah,
image except for one and it's on all their shirts. They made a neon custom sign about it. And at that point, it's like, do I tell them? And, but it's like slowing down because people, and I used to do this. Like the first few fictional books I published, reading back, there's typos, there's stuff that I wish I
mhm,
had worked on more, but I was just so hot to try. I want it out there now. We always want
yeah,
it out as soon as possible. And slowing
mhm,
down kind of just has come with time for me. For me, and you and I talked about this in our cadence and escaping the calendar, setting your own
mhm,
system episode together. Amazing episode, if I say so myself. You know,
yeah,
I talked about my milestones used to be every year when I went to the same conference, I needed to have more books or more episodes or whatever it was. I was chasing, I need to get to 100 episodes or I need to get to 200 episodes or I need to have at least two new books a year. Otherwise, I'm not showing improvement or growth to these
yeah,
circles. And for me now, it's like, hey, yeah, God versus Dynamo Human Spirit was supposed to be released a year ago. I'm developing it more, and that's more important than getting it out
yeah,
as soon as possible. I could plug
yeah.
the idea into ChatGPT right now and have the whole book be done by tonight. But the idea is
Mm,
like, I want to make sure it comes from the heart. I want to make sure that it's
yeah,
right. And, you know, do I care more about the quality or the pacing? Like you said, we're so accelerated
yes.
because it's part of the environment because we're competing with people who are pumping out stuff every day. Now we've got artists who do stuff by hand racing
Yeah.
against machines that can do it in seconds.
Yes. And the thing is, it's bizarre. It's bizarre that we think that um, getting something out quicker and getting something out
Mhm.
automatically um,
We'll have a
makes
bigger
it
response.
makes it makes it okay. The thing is, again, it comes. It's a circular argument here. The quality, the ability to discern, that's biblical. You have to discern. Um, and the understanding of nuance is an interesting word because we talk about this again in the context of comedy because it's the nuances in comedy, it's the nuances in our stories that could turn them from tragic to comedic.
Mm.
And understanding that skill, I think that's what you're developing now as a stand-up comedian. And kudos to you for doing that. I remember when you were talking about your first stand-up
My knees were weak, my
opportunity, and
palms
and
were
now.
sweaty. I had vomit on my sweater with Steve Wright spaghetti. You know,
So, so in terms of that growth and that development, it comes with nuance, mastery, the ability, the desire to get better at some art or craft. Mastery isn't about lording your skill over somebody to demean them so that you can be seen to be higher. It's developing your craft for you,
mm.
making sure that you get out of it what you want to. You put into it what you want to get out of it. It's a never fancy word. It's an atelic activity. You're not doing it for the outcome. You're doing it because it's important to do. You find it important and valuable to do it.
Mm.
Um, I did that with dancing. But I took up social dancing, salsa and kazumba. I did that with
Oh, okay.
music. I took up a percussion instrument, and they weren't things for an outcome as much as things that were just good in themselves to explore. And the outcomes were great. I widened my social circle with social dancing, which was fantastic.
One
And
led to your days of
similarly with
stripping.
music.
I remember when you were
Ah,
voted
where
Britain's
did
number
that come from?
one Jamaican British stripper. And I know a lot of the moves you use, people were like, "Where did you learn this? How did you hone this craft?" And it was, yes, dude, just like that. But I think one of the things that we're talking about to word it a certain way is we believe that the cadence output is more impressive than the work itself, right? It's not, hey, Mr. Whiskey published a new book. It's like, wow, Mr. Whiskey, that's your third book since I last saw you. How do you keep up that cadence, man? You are so impressive. The impression is in the output of the work, not the quality of the work. And like you said, we should want
Yes.
it to be, hey, it's not that I can play 20 songs half-heartedly on the guitar. It's like, hey, I have one song and it'll bring you to tears because I put my heart and
Yeah.
soul into it. Or
And it
what's the drum
and
you have? You have a special type of drum.
it's called a cajon, C A
Yeah.
C A
I
J
don't
O
have
N,
my
which
I don't
is
have my Knorr with me. We could
Spanish.
play some music together if I had my
Yeah.
my biblical Knorr.
But the thing is that um, the assumption is you output more because people want to consume more. And the,
Mm,
the sad fact is that people are consuming more,
but
and the
less.
more they could, the more they consume, the less quality
Mm,
it is. And they're not making the distinction between what is real and what is AI, or what is, if it gets me, if it satisfies me, if brain what doesn't care how good it is, brain what is actually a race to the bottom, because that
mm,
stuff
yeah.
is really just about getting as much out there into the ether as possible. And the more you
What is
get
the
out there,
minimum that we can output that people will be entertained by is really what it is. Like how low quality of an AI video can we
yes.
make? And a lot of the low quality AI videos rely heavily on known characters. So because
Mhm.
Peter Griffin from Family Guy or SpongeBob is in it, I don't care how low quality it is. I want to consume that content. And I think one thing we've talked about when it comes to learning styles, because you and I are both educators, you more officially than
Mhm.
me, we talk about, a mile wide, an inch deep, or an inch
Yeah.
wide, a mile deep, and I think
Yeah.
people are consuming, like you said, more content, but lower quality. Most reels only get listened to a few seconds, or now we've got
Yeah.
the fast forward button on them, which helps consume more, but at a faster pace. And you could speed read, for example, the Bible. You could probably read the whole Bible in a week or a month, right? But
Mhm.
what is the level of engagement and retention compared to if, hey, it took me a year, but like I could quote scripture to you, I can tell you what
Yeah.
happened versus,
Yeah.
hey, I listened to it on four times speed and half of it went in one ear and out the other, like my
Yeah.
recent
Yeah.
haircutting experience.
And bringing this back to real practicalities, you can't speed listen your partner. You can't speed listen your child who's going through
But you
something.
can't ignore
You
them.
can't speed listen a friend. You can ignore them. That's true. I mean, the thing is, if they don't sound like brain rot, or you're not interested in the story, then you will ignore them. The sad thing is that it's it's what is the substance? What is, if you're dealing with things that are of low quality, then what is the stuff your life is made of?
Mm.
If if it's a race to the bottom, and that's what I think, that's what we're trying to stem that flow, right? This has been a long form discussion, and maybe we'll grab sound bites out of it, whereby we'll let people know some of the interesting things we talked about, because we went all over the place. And the meandering is good, the wandering is good. because you have to hear people wander to work out what's important to them. There's things that you've said, and I've come back and we put and sort of touched on a point, and you've done the same for me. I've said something, you go, "Oh, that's a good point," and you've touched back on it. Those are the elements in a discussion, in a conversation. We're doing this virtual. I've never met you in person, but I know our interactions are deep enough for me to be consistently trusting that not if, when we meet, it'll just be, it'll just be a
Aruba,
continuation of what we
Jamaica.
do.
Boy, I want to take you to. Oh, wait. Sorry, that's the wrong song. Well,
By the
after
way,
I
that is.
leave you on the plane ride away from you, Steve Wright, I'm gonna record me in the plane. I'm gonna like make it a fake proposal so I can record in the middle of the aisle without people giving me a hard time. I'm gonna be like, "Come back to Jamaica,
There we
you
go.
Jamaica mistake." What Jimmy Buffett,
I, it's not
but
even a. I heard the song and
it's
I
not even
wasn't
that good of a
impressed.
song. Yeah.
It's not. I wasn't
The
impressed. But
reason
the
I
island.
love that song was the first time I ever heard it. I thought of you. No homo. I was like, oh my goodness, I gotta sing this to Steve Wright. Like that's the thing. It's when you encountered a suicide experience, military experience, you thought of me. When I heard a song about Jamaica, I
Yeah.
thought of you. It's just the
There
it's
you
it's
go.
what we know each
There
other
you
for.
go.
I
There
passed
you
a
go.
Jamaican restaurant and I thought of you. And probably because you're the only Jamaican I know. But you know. And it's
But
funny because you were in Britain for so long. So I'm like, my only Jamaican
yeah,
representative is he has
it's
not
not in Jamaica.
culturally adopted many of the Jamaican ways. He's much more, he's
Mhm.
got the British accent. He eats donuts with chopsticks. He drinks tea, right? He's not, I've never seen someone in Jamaica use chopsticks to eat a vegan donut, but
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because I didn't pack any. I didn't pack any. I didn't pack any chopsticks. I have half a dozen chopsticks in my drawer. Yeah, and
mise
I
en
didn't
place.
pack
In
any.
Japan, it is mise en place. You
You
can
have to
find
have some,
rice and
yes.
chopsticks at any time. In fact,
And
check this out. I keep chopsticks under my hat at all times.
yeah, I miss them. I have to. There's enough Chinese stores here that I definitely have to pick up a set of
Well,
chopsticks when I'm out
Steve,
again.
for your next birthday, I'm gonna get you a pair of chopsticks where it's a figure of me on one and a figure of you on the other. I
Oh.
mean, yeah,
And it's kind of, yeah, that sounds kind of gross actually.
I was gonna say sounds a little yeah, like we're a little
Little
closer than
risque, little risque.
podcasters, but I think it's funny. Yeah, well, because
So it's funny.
it made me think of it because here they have a lot of figure chopsticks where there's dragons or Godzilla or other stuff on the
Yeah.
end of them. Maybe I'll get
Mm.
one of my dog. I'll get my dog as
Oh,
chopsticks. That would be cute.
whiskey
I
shot. That
miss
would be
her.
very
Every
cute.
dog here is only like 3 pounds, and they all get pushed in a stroller, and it would be her like paradise. She would have so many friends. Um, it
Ah,
would be dangerous for me because being a good-looking dog dad in a cowboy hat with all these Japanese
yes.
women and their small
Magnet.
dogs, I mean, it would just be
Magnet.
trouble for me. It would be trouble for me. It really would be because nothing pleases me better than when women who English isn't their first language say, "How to say you're very, very hot? Is that correct?" And I'm like, "That's very correct. That's the best English I ever
Very
heard in my
good.
life." Or,
Very
sometimes they'll
hot.
whisper to me during a haircut and they said they didn't speak English, they'll say, "Very handsome." Like, oh,
Oh.
okay. Did you know that word? I don't know if she went to the back of the room and typed into her phone. She chat GBT'd like how to impress American cowboy. Because a lot of them come up to me like it's funny. Everyone assumes I'm from Texas. In America, they
Yes, I
assume
was going to
that.
say,
All the more so in Japan. And when I perform comedy,
yes.
I'm going to be joking about that. And I had a guy at the top of the sky tree. He was like, "Excuse me, sir. Your outfit, very cool." And I was like, "Oh, thank you, thank you." But as my friend liked to say, he goes, "Mr. Whiskey, if you walk down the street in America and a Japanese guy passed you wearing a samurai helmet, that's what you look like to them. Like you're wearing what is like the American samurai helmet." And I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? I guess so. I guess so. I think cowboys were not as
You,
honorable as samurai. I mean, they
you,
both had their
you,
flaws, but
well, I'm going to say something here. Look it up. Patrick Duffy on Dallas. That's who you look like.
Okay.
A young Patrick Duffy on Dallas. Forget JR, JR's younger brother. I forgot his name now in the
Well, I
TV
think the
show.
white hat is so much better than my black hat. I mean, I love the black hat, don't get me wrong, but I
Yeah.
am digging this brand new white hat I got on my way to
Yes.
Military Creator Con.
It works with your hair coming out through the
Oh
sides. And
yeah,
yeah.
so it's not all
That's
blended
the
together. I
black,
actually just got a
yes, not all
haircut,
blend together.
which you know
Looking
about that
sharp.
experience. You know about the
Yeah.
haircut experience. It's my favorite experience
Very
in Japan so
naughty.
far. And
Very naughty.
I think it's
How did
funny. I
I
usually
do?
tell people, like, I jokingly say I'm like Clint Eastwood's grandkid. I just sometimes I'll just say that. I'll just throw it out there. Um,
There you go. There you
maybe I
go.
could be his great grandkid. He's old now,
He's
actually.
old.
I might maybe I'll say his
Yeah.
great grandkid. Actually, what I tell
There
most
you go.
people is that I am. I don't remember how many generations away, but I tell them I'm basically the grandson to the whatever exponential power of King Solomon. Because I definitely sometimes feel like King Solomon or David. So, and
Oh,
there's
there
a
you go.
high genetic chance that I am related to them, considering, 1,000
They're
women
pretty wild in
served.
their day.
King
Yeah.
Solomon's kind of like McDonald's.
Solomon
He's
had a
like
few.
thousand served. Yeah.
So, yeah, he was pretty prolific. And he did write
Yeah. But
Ecclesiastes,
speaking of,
at the end of it, at the conclusion of the matter, the conclusion of the matter.
don't make me quote that. That's one of my favorite Bible quotes.
I
Of the
love it.
reading and writing many books, there will be no end. Pay no attention to them, my son, for much study wearies the body. Listen to only
Body.
these wise sayings. The conclusion of the matter is heard. There is but one purpose to serve and glorify God. Yeah,
There you go.
Ecclesiastes 12. The idea is that
Right at the end.
perhaps he wrote it on his deathbed in repentance. We can only hope so. And actually, one of my favorite quotes in the Bible, as more of a brain rot joke, is when King Rehoboam, he takes over the throne after the passing of Solomon, and he asks the wise elders, "What should I do?" The people are saying, "My dad was too harsh," and they're like, "Be a little less harsh. You're a brand new king. This could be great. If you are harsh or worse, they're gonna rebel." He goes, "Okay, I hear you. But young guys that I party with, what should I do?" And they're like, "Beat these people, scourge them with scorpions." And he says, "My little finger is thicker than my forefather's waist." And I just love saying that. There are theories that King Solomon was very overweight. If you look at, I used to know exactly the number of uh, cows, oxen, wagyu oxen, sheep, and kilos of flour used in King Solomon's palace daily. And if you look at
Wow.
the composition of how much flour and wheat and sugar was used, the idea is that he was eating a gourmet bakery every day.
Yeah, every
And
day. Wow.
it's a shame
He
because
packed the
we often
pounds.
think, I picture him as a very handsome man. He was known worldwide for
Yes.
his wisdom. He had the most prosperous kingdom. Women all over the world loved him for his wisdom, probably more than his looks, kind of like me. And, I never thought that he was just huge. But if you have the richest kingdom and they're bringing you these, Michelin restaurant quality cakes every day,
Yes. Yeah.
I doubt he was jump roping like you and I do.
It was, and in that culture, that may have been that if you were hearty in size, then you were
Mhm.
obviously you had means.
That's in the
So
Navy.
the more
That's the
means you
Navy rank
have,
system
the
right
big
now.
you are. Oh,
In the
really? The
Navy,
big you are.
yes, except for officers, because they have higher physical fitness standards. When you go from petty officer to chief, it's about a 75 to 100 pound increase. And then when you go from chief to
Wow.
senior chief, it's about another 25 to 50 pounds. And when you go master chief, you're now in the 300 plus range. And many chiefs in the United States Navy, they can't button their bottom button, and it's called the Chiefs button. And if you try to tell them like, "Hey, Chief, your last button is a button," that's my Chiefs button. Don't worry about it. It's in regs, because it's kind of just like I don't know. They make more
Okay.
money, so they eat more. I don't know what it is, but like
Wow.
now this isn't 100%, but like 85% of the time in the Navy, you will see that weight and rank correlate. And I've heard from Marines and Army guys I've interviewed kind of the same thing. And
Wow.
yeah, so basically the skinny sailors are the new recruits.
Poor.
But one thing I wanted to talk to you about, some interesting commentary that you and I have kind of talked about before in the context of black culture versus ghetto culture, and then
Mm.
my involvement in it. You have met Imani before at the water cooler. She's one of my
Yeah.
best friends. She's a young black woman, and she and I have had podcast episodes. I guess we haven't really talked about it on the podcast, but she was often, for lack of better words, ostracized by most black men for being, quote, a white girl dressed as a black woman because she wasn't doing what was more ghetto tendency in terms of her music interests or her clothing style or whatever it was. A lot of black men felt like she was a fake black woman because she didn't act like what they wanted to see in her from what a lot of music video culture put forward, what a lot of social media culture put forward. And I have gotten to experience racism through my friendship with her because everyone assumes we're an interracial couple. Like if I take her out to dinner, I remember there was a time, and this was, I guess, the most awkward I've ever felt in my life in terms of like a racial situation where I took her into this restaurant in Georgia, and it was breakfast time post church Sunday, and she was the only black woman, the only black person in the whole building, and all these old white people, not to be stereotypical, but that's who was there, all turned and kind of looked at us the whole time. They were whispering,
Mm.
staring over, and
Mm.
it's interesting. But it's not just white people. We've had black people kind of, you're a traitor because you're spending time with a white man, especially a white man with a cowboy hat. That I mean, it just does not help. It makes it a whole lot worse because a lot of times
Yeah,
they're like,
Confederate
"Oh, you've
flag.
got," I'll use their exact words. "Oh, look, you've got your own plantation owner with you." Like that's the kind of stuff that has been
Ah,
addressed to her and I, and it's just very interesting to see some of that culture perpetuated. And then the opposite, I remember watching an interview with a black gentleman. He tried to talk to black women in Atlanta, which is its own cultural subgroup in a way, the same way he would talk to white women. He grew up in a white community, and he got rejected as a fake black man, as a white man posing as a black man. So in the
yeah.
context of you and I talk about culture, cultural identity, and stuff, I'd love definitely. I think you and I have kind of addressed it before, but to talk a little bit about that, especially being Black British culture, Black Jamaican culture are
Yeah.
different than
Yeah.
Black American culture. I mean, even
Yeah.
I've been on plenty of podcasts in Africa, and their culture and perspective on
Yeah.
what it means to be Black compared to American Black is
Yeah.
very different as well.
Yeah. Yeah. We get again, it comes the root cause of all of this is not taking the time to think and not getting
Mm.
outside of either your comfort zone or your soundbite echo chamber, right? Because um because everybody is everybody is unique. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and we're made the way we're supposed to be made. And that goes for me, and it goes for you, and it goes for that person over there sitting next to that person over there.
Mm. And
But
to
if you
you
never
listening
get to
right
that
now,
point, and it goes to you listening right now, and if you never get past what it looks like because some stereotype has been ingrained on you because your feed has sent that
mm,
algorithm to you, then you're always going to be at the mercy of some should out there that I'll say you have no control over. You do have control over it because you can stop listening to it, or you can take the time to go beyond it. So, guy's got a cowboy hat, sitting next to a black girl, and they're at lunch together. That's fine. I mean, there's nothing innocuous about that. There's just two people doing their thing. He's got a cowboy hat on. That doesn't automatically make him anything, you know. So if you don't scratch beneath the surface, then you're just going to get stuck with what you've got. So yeah, you're going to get called names. You get called coconut, banana. If you're black on the outside, white on the inside, or whatever. So yeah, I mean, and I've had my fair share of that. Lived in the States 17 years,
oh yeah,
and
over in San
uh,
Diego,
San Diego, and military. It's a military town. It's very diverse in that respect.
and
A lot of
California
people
in general is
come
very
through it.
diverse.
Yeah, and it's very different. You've got different kinds of black people, just like Eskimos have different kind of ice. You know, I mean, literally, you can make the discernment of any and every group. No group is better or worse than the other. Sometimes they're just working from a bad. They're working from a bad script, or
Mm,
they're working from a malign filter. The filter that they're using to see the world is not right. It's not quite, it's not the way it should
right.
be. So they're looking at everything through that filter. And if they could fix the filter, they would realize that it's not the world that's wrong, it's the filter that they're using to see the world. Um, and we've got to spend more time thinking past those those knee-jerk response stereotypes, because it doesn't serve you. It doesn't keep you safer. Um, sort of ignoring black men. I've had times when I've had to sort of not walk behind people because I didn't want them to feel that they were threatened by me,
Mm.
which is kind of strange. I mean, to
No,
kind of
that's how
actually
I feel
say that.
here sometimes, actually. Like last night, I was walking by myself and there was this young Japanese couple, and I had to slow up majorly because it felt like there's a lot of anti-immigration, a lot of American hate in Japan right now. Like I got off the
Mm.
train in just a small local town and they're handing out newspapers, anti-American stuff. And they try to give one to me. It's like, why am I going to read this? I don't think well, that means I'm blending in as planned. I was
Oh.
like, yeah, yeah, I try to speak Japanese and try not to appear that. But, one of the things too is like, I think there's a lot of blame. There's a lot of blaming another racial group for one's own problems. Like you look at Japan, they believe
Yeah.
that Americans and immigration are destroying the Japanese culture. Well, let's look at it though. Japanese culture has shifted on its own because of technology advancements, because of changes in culture. It's not just a
Mm.
demand or consumerism. Like, has American influencer culture spread a lot of Japan and does it perpetuate certain sides of it? 100%. However, it's not just the spread of that, it's the existence of it. So you could say, hey, a lot of influencers, they all go to the same club, which is like Tokyo Burlesque. And it's all video clips online of Asian girls just sleeping with any American guy. We love Americans. We love their bodies. We love this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, so yeah, there's definitely a perpetuation of that on social media, but you also had that club set up to generate that traction, to make money, and to employ those women to do that. And it's like, you can't
Yeah.
blame Americans saying, oh, we made those to bring the Americans here. Like, you had that on your own accord for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
you, like, a lot of the removal of more historical cultures or styles of cities, that has nothing to do with American tourists. You develop skyscrapers in that culture on your own. The idea of,
Mm.
oh, all our Japanese women are not sleeping with Japanese men now, our population is declining. That's not just an immigration issue. That's a cultural mindset issue of its own.
Mm. Yeah.
I can tell you the reason why. I've talked to a lot of young Japanese women during my solo travels, and the response I got was, traditional Japanese men are too close-minded for what we now believe as Japanese
Yeah.
women. So we're
Yeah.
going to quote the open-minded white man. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, not all white men are very open-minded, so be careful about
Uh,
that. But yeah, and that has nothing to do with us or a negative impact on their culture. That has to do with their own cultural issues inside it. But it's easier to say, hey, it's the Americans' fault. We're going to make anti-immigration laws and we're
yeah.
going to tax tourists. And it's like, you created the tourist industry and it boomed, and now you want to blame us for
Yeah.
partaking in it. It's
Yeah.
definitely a consumer and producer issue. But, that's just like, there's a lot of groups that are blaming another group when it's their own cultural thing. Like, look at talking about, if a black man says, I don't want, a black woman who isn't ghetto. Well, what's the reason for that? Well, according to a lot of the ghetto leader industries, looking at like especially music videos, they're putting forward the stereotype that ghetto women are easier to sleep with, that they're very
Wow.
sexualized, that or they're easier to make a baby mama or whatever it is, right? That's some of the stereotypes they're putting forward. And some men are being attracted to that. So they're saying, hey, I don't want to be with a black woman who isn't ghetto because I want something that is more sexualized or more accessible or more abandonable, right? And
Yeah.
you have to look at like who's putting forward that culture. I mean, you could say, hey, white people put it forward to keep black people ghetto, but there's also
Yeah.
the black women who are making those lyrics that are all about some of those lyrics. I've read them. I don't know if you've read them, Steve. It's like I didn't even know
I
these
don't.
things exist. Try not to read them,
It,
but it's like
yeah.
they're also putting that forward. And you could say either
Yeah.
they sold out, but either way, it's not about who you sell out to. It's about did you choose to sell out just as much as
Well,
it is.
as you use the term, you use the term sell. You use the term sellout, and part of me says throughout this part, this discussion is follow the money.
Hmm.
There's something. It's crass to think that following the money will actually shine some light as to why particular behaviors are being perpetuated, because it can't be the only answer, but it's often a strong one. It's we see it in sort of dance hall culture in Jamaica. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of through the lyrics, the music. It's a djembe beat. It's a very Afrocentric beat. Beat is great. Beat is great, and the vibe is great. But then you throw on top of it lyrics that are deliberately antagonistic or
Mm.
create issues, either being profane or being full of suggestions or innuendo, not even innuendos. Back in the day, back in my R&B days, it was an innuendo. You sort of say, turn off the lights and light a candle and do all this sort of, Teddy
Yeah,
Pendergrass and those guys.
nowadays you just say it
That
so
now they just tell you
straightforward.
straight, I'm gonna.
Nowadays you say, I'm
So
gonna take a
it's
candle and put it where the light doesn't shine, you know?
I'm gonna extinguish that candle. So anyway, so so the point is that you've got something that has been sort of shifted and maligned, but then somehow it struck a chord or it made money, and then it becomes now the blueprint. It's the copy and paste mindset that you get now. People go, oh, just copy and paste that, and that's what's gonna drive it. And then if you're on the race to the bottom, then this is the way to. If you're on the race to the bottom and it pays, we are screwed. We
Mm.
are absolutely screwed. And the thing is, the irony is that who is it paying? Because there's always going to be a hierarchy. Even in the race to the bottom, there's going to be a hierarchy. There's going to be someone who's making serious bank, and there's going to be a gazillion people who are trying to make bank and not doing it. But at the same time, they're pushing out crap. They're pushing out a narrative that is false, patently false. A narrative they don't even believe in themselves, but
Mm.
because that is the thing to do, they'll do it as a race to the bottom. And that, I don't know, there's got to be a point at which you sort of go, I've reached the bottom and I'll stop digging or throw away the shovel or I'll try and get myself out of this. But I don't know. Our capacity to do crappy things seems to get deeper and deeper. We
Mm.
don't we get a threshold. We go, oh man, we'll never cross that line, and then before you know it, 2 minutes later, you just crossed it and go, oh well, I'm really at bottom. I'm never going to go beyond this.
Mm.
And then two
Mm.
days later, and
Come
so
on, Pastor,
we
preach it.
we
I hear you.
no, it's not even a pastoral thing.
No, no, I agree. And
It's a societal thing, because what happens is if a society is racing to the bottom, we have nothing else to go for but extinction. I mean,
mhm.
we are. It's got to. I mean, it
Well,
sounds dystopian, but
but
we
this is
watch
something that's
dystopian
gone on
movies.
for a while because I'll give you some Shakespearean commentary on this. The women love Shakespeare. When you look at it, you look at, I believe, oh, I think it was Macbeth. Hopefully it's not Hamlet. I think it's Macbeth. I'm gonna 50-50 it. I'm pretty sure it's Macbeth. He goes and says to himself, if and I'm gonna paraphrase it here, so it's not gonna be in Shakespearean tongue. Actually, I'll say it in Japanese. No, I was just kidding. If I wade halfway through a river of blood, to cross over further into immorality or to turn back and hold accountability is the same distance of blood to cross. And
Yes.
I love that quote. You look at it a few ways. You talk about and what you said applies to addiction, it applies to pornography consumption. Everything can be a gateway door where you say,
Yeah.
"Hey, well, I've already done this, so I've already cheated before. I guess I might as well do it again." Or I already watched pornography, so then fair is just a step up from that, right? A lot of people who watch pornography to addictive means, they slowly get into more what they would say kinkier or more immoral
Yeah.
sex, right? Which ultimately leads to bestiality, pedophilia, and other acts, right? When it started off as just a basic man and woman porn, right? Because you build not only a tolerance for that pain threshold, but also your morality slowly crumbles. Same thing with addiction.
Mm,
We've had episodes on when do you reach rock bottom in addiction? And
mm,
for addicts, their rock bottom can be way further than a normal person's. For some of them, there is no rock bottom almost because
yeah.
I mean, I had people on my show. I had Mr. Whiskey. I had three DUIs. I was arrested 8 times. My wife left me. My children left me. I was in the hospital. I almost died, and I still just wanted to use. And it's like their rock bottom can be so much. And I think what you're talking about is our society's rock bottom keeps getting lower and lower. And I agree
Yeah.
100%. A race to the bottom. And it is really sad to see. Now, there are a few things I want to address before we close off the episode. And I know how we're going to end it is you're going to have to share a Jamaican joke because we've talked about from Japan to Jamaica,
I,
you've got to share some Jamaican humor with us. But you've moved to Jamaica now. You're exploring your identity as being genetically Jamaican, now kind of culturally embracing it at, I mean, you're over 60 years old. I mean, talk about that. Is it ever too late to become part of a culture that runs through our blood?
oh, that's a great question. It's ever too late to be part of a culture that runs through your blood. The short answer would be no, it isn't. And not everybody needs to take that journey.
Mm,
And and I've got a book that's on my heart, and I'll be leaning on my five people, and you're probably one of them, as authors to help me craft this book. But it really is about, to some degree, part of that. Having been born and raised in a place where my parents are not from, and then even migrating to the US where I'm not from, and then having one of my daughters born in that place. So she has a stake, she has citizenship in the US. Um, to come in back to come in to come in almost full circle, my parents had retired and moved back. They were returnees to Jamaica. There's a cultural dynamic around that between people who never left the island to people who have left and came back to the island.
mm,
There's the dynamic of the diaspora of Jamaica. Jamaica's impact on the world stage in many areas is much bigger than the island of Jamaica. There's only 3 million people on this island, but Bob Marley through music, the reggae phenomena,
right.
even the yardie culture with marijuana, the cannabis. Um, so there's impacts on society and social perspective of Jamaica that's
Right.
much bigger than the island. People know Jamaica as the Caribbean island probably more than any other. Maybe Cuba's close, but I think Jamaica probably beats Cuba even in some areas. All that to say, yes, if you have a stirring to find out what home is and what home means, then you should explore that. And for me, moving my family across continents, um, the key thing for me was I had to make sure home was where we were. Home was that we were the nucleus, The
Mm.
microcosm of home was where we were. So, safety, financial, psychological, identity, safety. Um, um, but at the same time, there's something that says I'm glad to be here. I always feel at home in Jamaica whenever I've visited. I've got Jamaican citizenship now. I have a Jamaican passport, and it's the only country that welcomes me home when I go through the airport.
Mm.
No other. I mean, I have a British passport too, but no one welcomes you home in Britain.
They're like, oh, this guy's back. We
So
were hoping he didn't come back this time, Wait, that guy. But I had to ask
literally,
Steve, because that kind of goes into my big question. I was wondering if you leave the island and return, or someone like you who is coming to the island but was not there originally, are you celebrated or kind of looked down on? Are you a fake a Jamaican, a fake Jamaican? Are you? Let's try to make it work.
a fake
Right, but like, what
Jamaican,
is
a
the
Jamaican.
culture around that? Because you said your parents left and came back. Was it like, look who came
Yeah,
crawling back, or was it you fake
there is.
Jamaicans or
I, I think
prodigal son?
there's another dynamic because up until 1962, Jamaica was part of the British Empire. It
Mm.
was a colony. It was a colony. So there's a strong English, it's a strong British influence here. So maybe the reasons for leaving and coming back may be different or excused. Also, the impact of British culture on or British
And
colonialism
I experienced that in
is different.
yeah, in the British Virgin Island of Tortula, or is it Tortula? Yeah, I think so. Tortola, yeah.
I think
When I
yeah.
was there, it felt like I was in Jamaica, but everyone said I'm British. And it
Mm,
was kind of strange
mm,
because they had the Jamaican accent, Jamaican style attire,
okay.
dialect, and
Yeah.
everything, cultural mindset, but they get offended if you say they're Jamaican. Because I asked someone politely, I was like, "So, are you considered Jamaican or British?" And I got like a nasty retort, like, "We're British." Why would you ever even assume or associate us with Jamaican culture? And it's like, well, you've got all Jamaican flags and colors and everything here. And
Yeah,
so it's
Caribbean, yeah,
interesting
yeah.
seeing some of those dynamics. And to me, it felt like they looked down on Jamaican people because they had the British label, but the label and the actual cultural lifestyle weren't being aligned. And it's like, does being labeled as British make you feel superior to people who are living the same culture as you, but they call themselves Jamaican? And so that was an interesting cultural dynamic that I felt very awkward in because she snapped at me. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
trying to understand. I wasn't trying to be racist and assume that, hey, you look Jamaican skin color wise, so obviously you're not British. That's not what I was saying. It wasn't the skin
Right.
color. It was you literally have the whole Jamaican culture, at least
Yeah.
in that particular
Or
spot of the island.
Caribbean. I don't know. I mean, they're technically not. It's Tortola is technically not Jamaica. So there's a strong colonial influence across the entire Caribbean. So that was part of the empire building, whether it was for labor or for resources. So, I wouldn't say minerals back then, but it was probably plantation type, agricultural resources. A lot of the cotton industry, the lace making and cotton industry in the UK was prevalent back in the 1700s. A lot of people were very wealthy and landowners because of it, but they never grew cotton. So where did it come from? It came from somewhere.
Mm,
So there is the colonial element. I'm not an expert on this space, so I don't want to say
yeah.
anything out of hand. But my feeling about it, and to answer your question about being a fake Jamaican, I don't think there's an element of fakeness about it. There's a strong influence in Jamaica from the US because of its proximity, and some of the economic ties are fairly strong in terms of visa programs and
Mm,
work programs. So there's a lot of migration in that
right.
respect. America, Canada, as well as the UK.
Well, are you
Um,
comfortable to walk down the street, Steve, right? Like if you walk down the street, do you feel like a fellow Jamaican or do you still feel like obviously you've been to Jamaica before. So it's not like you
yeah,
just moved there on a whim. Like
yeah,
you went for Christmas and everything post hurricane and
yeah,
I know you've been
yeah.
there quite a bit, so
You have to. It's a socially. I feel very comfortable. I feel very comfortable in Jamaica. It's like anywhere in the world where there is the opportunity to be taken advantage of. If people see an opening to malign or to manipulate, they might take it. But most people are genuine in what they're doing. They just like you said at the beginning, when you're people watching, you're in the park watching people live life, do life, and most people doing life can't be asked to try and trick somebody into or out of something because that's too much work.
mm,
Most people just want to get on with what they're doing. They don't want to be hassled unnecessarily, and they don't want to be duped themselves. So most people will kind of just be, straightforward. So I don't rock up and pretend I'm Mr. Naive Black British and talk Cockney to everybody. And at the same time, some of the things I say culturally won't land with Jamaicans. So I listen a lot more than I speak. I look for commonalities, and that's a common thing wherever I've been.
mm,
Cambodia, California, same thing. Right? You walk down a wrong neighborhood in California, you're in as much trouble as you are in a wrong street in Cambodia. All right. People are very different, but the dynamic
right.
can still be the same.
But
So
as long as you can find fish and chips and tea, you will be at ease.
no, I don't eat fish
And
because I'm
that's your
vegan.
mantra, isn't that your mantra? Vegan fish,
I'm,
chips, and tea, I'm at ease.
I'm at ease. I'm at ease when people take the time to see me for who I am, because I will give them
Yeah.
the time to see them for who they are. And because I'm not in a rush anymore.
Mm,
I'm not rushing any my life isn't about rushing to something
mhm.
or through something. So I'll give you the time if you give me the time. And if we gel and there's a way to communicate and get things done collaboratively, great. If we
Mm.
don't gel, then no harm, no foul. Don't bother me, I won't bother you.
I like what you
So
said.
I think that, you know,
Yeah.
I
I'm
think
not
that's
Russian.
the
I'm
key.
Jamaican. I'm not Russian. I'm Jamaican. I see what you're saying. It's true in
Not
all
Russian,
senses.
I'm
Right.
Jamaican.
Well, I think and like you said, everything we've talked about, yes, we've wandered nomadically, but everything is interconnected. You know, it all comes down
Yes,
to ultimately your decisions, which is you can always give people the time of day, but don't expect the return. You know, do your part, which is you can be slow to speak, quick to listen, and that doesn't mean you're going to get the same behavior. But as long as you have tried on your end, then you've done your part. And with that, also be slow to speak and quick to listen when it comes to stillness, to God, to your inner dialogue, to those conversations, but
yeah,
be quick to not listen to everything on social media, all these inundations, these
yes.
sound bites,
Be
and of
be
course,
discerning.
be discerning. And
Yeah,
that's always the number one thing I put forward whenever anyone asks me one lesson of faith. I say a spirit of discernment, not just on a biblical level, but with everything you do, with all the choices you
yeah,
make. And I think one of the key parts in able to have discernment, what you said earlier, awareness and slowing down. So I think the whole lesson we've talked about is stillness starts with slowing down. We're living in a fast-paced world that seems to be spinning faster and faster because we're just constantly inundated with information or going after information, and we need to slow down. In fact, let's slow down and finish this episode with a joke. Steve Wright, you got to share a Jamaican joke or a British joke, but it's Japan to Jamaica, so I'd prefer something cultural.
uh,
You had time to look one
two
up,
guys.
so
I didn't know. Well, I don't. I
yeah.
did. Maybe I
But
could
you were
have done,
engaged with
but
me,
look,
so
yeah.
yeah.
One. It was rude to be looking up something
Yeah.
while I'm listening to
While we
you,
were having a
and
one-to-one
two,
thing.
yeah, and yes, a great one-to-one thing. And number two is I wouldn't be able to. learn it and get and deliver it. But there's the classic two guys in the pub, and as they are in England or here, well, no, in the pub in England, and one of them says to his mate, says, "Yeah, me and the missus are going to the Caribbean for our holidays this year." And his friend goes, "Jamaica?" And he goes, "No, she wanted to go by herself."
I think I'm tracking. Like
Oh.
I'm
It's
pulling a
the
Steve Wright. I'm laughing even though I don't get it. No, it sounds like did did she it sounded like he was saying he thought
Oh, you're
he
gonna explain
asked,
the
did
joke now.
she
Don't explain the joke. If it
I
doesn't
want to make sure
land,
I'm
it
tracking
doesn't.
right. He thought his friend was saying, did she make you go
Forcing
with
her.
her?
Yes.
Right. Did
Yeah.
Jamaica? Did she make you?
Jamaica.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jamaica me
Did
crazy.
Jamaica?
Yeah.
Jamaica. I am Jamaican. You crazy?
Well, that's probably the most famous Jamaican joke is Jamaican me crazy, or
Mm.
but
That's a punchline, but I don't know what the setup
yeah, I
is.
don't know where it came from, but people say it all the time. But it's better
Mm.
to be Jamaican someone
It's a
crazy
pun.
than to be Jamaica mistake. So
Don't you make a mistake. That's the yeah. There you
I'm
go.
trying to think.
Don't
The
you make a.
only Japanese joke I know off the top of my head, um,
Is it clean?
kind of. It's all
Miss,
right. It's not.
Mr.
It's
Mr. Whiskey,
semi-clean.
you're getting very
Mr.
risque.
Whiskey, Mr.
Mr.
Dusaki. It's basically
Mr.
it's hey it's a pickup line. It's hey girl, are you from Asia? Cause I'm China to get in your Japanese. And it's just so stupid. It's so stupid. And the funniest part is
It
like the
is.
guy who posted that joke said it to a Korean girl, so it's like none of the above either. No, I don't know any, but I what I can say
He's
is
sold out. He's sold out. Send it to a Korean. Get it?
he's sold out. I guess so. Yes. No, I don't get it.
So
Oh,
Korea.
so out. Oh, so out. Sorry,
Oh
sorry.
my
I
god!
heard the D
Oh
too strong.
my
So out.
goodness!
Yeah. Okay. But with
Oh,
that,
I
I
thought that
have to
was good. I
say
thought that was a good pun, actually, but never mind.
it went over my head. Seoul, Korea. Yeah, it went over my head. I just didn't really feel the soul in that joke.
No, you didn't.
I didn't. It went over my head and it stayed under my hat. But I have to say, Shinji Shukjo. Sorry, I'm reading it here because I only know so much Japanese. So I gotta say, Shinji Shukjo no Minasama, Honjitsu wa okiki itadaki, arigato gozaimashita, ogenkida, which just means, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening today and take care. Steve, close us out in Jamaican
Thank
if you
you.
can.
Thank you. One love, one love. The Jamaican motto, the Jamaican coat of arms as the motto, out of many, one people. And
Mm,
that typifies the mixture, the true mixture of traditions and cultures in Jamaica. But that phrase goes further than just a coat of arms on a country.
mm,
I think we have to recognize that we are out of many in the world, but we are one people. We're human,
mm.
and live that way, man. Live that way. No
Hi,
problem.
Wakari Mashite. Uh,
I,
Wakari Mashite. And Steve, I'm sure you know this one. Sayonara day.
Sayonara today. Mr. Whiskey, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.